SuperTalk Mississippi Media production.
Got a cracked or shattered windshield? Well, don't worry. ProGlass has over 20 years of experience in windshield repair and replacement in Southwest Mississippi. Call us today, 601-748-1638 to schedule your appointment. ProGlass. We'll get you back on the road in no time.
This is Gerard Gibert, and thank you for listening to MidDays here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
MidDays with Gerard Gibert is on the air. MidDays with Gerard Gibert is powered by C-Spire. Power your home or business with C-Spire Fiber. To learn more, visit supertalk.fm/C-Spire. C-Spire Fiber powers SuperTalk Mississippi. Get ready to go beyond the headlines and join a meaningful conversation with people from around the state. You're listening to MidDays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Everyone, and welcome to MidDays, SuperTalk Mississippi. I'm your host, Gerard Gibert, along with Rhino in the Element Wealth studio, guiding you through the middle of your day with facts, fodder, and fine music on this Hump Day. All righty, it's a little chilly out there. It's going to get a little bit colder, isn't it, Rhino? I think that's what's scheduled for.
Well, it's going to get a little warmer as the day goes along, but not warm. And then, a little chilly tonight. And the majority of the Magnolia State.
Really cold north of our position across the Midwest and the Northeast. Man, really something. Right next to us, I got to start with this morning. I just think it fits into some of the discussions we've been having about what you like to describe as feelings and how our culture has evolved into one where everything is rooted in how one feels. Right next door, it's a bit hard to fathom, the University of Alabama. They tell their faculty, no diet talk around students to promote positive body image. They're right next door, University of Alabama. They have upcoming a Body Appreciation Week. Very important. Got to have that. Oh, my gosh. The University of Alabama's Department of Health Promotion and Wellness is encouraging faculty to avoid, quote, diet talk around students in an effort to promote the positive body image. Sheena Gregg, the department director and a certified intuitive eating counselor. What the heck is that? What's intuitive eating? What does that mean?
I believe that is not following a necessarily set schedule.
Okay.
But instead you eat until you feel satisfied, and then you stop. And then when you feel the urge to eat again, you eat until you feel satisfied and stop. And you just do that whenever. Well,
Sheena made this recommendation in an article published just 2 days ago on the university's news page. Said during the month of February, students often feel, quote, pressures to look a certain way for a spring break trip, social media influences, and general peer interactions. That's what's happening on college campuses these days. Negative body image in the college student population can be concerning due to its correlation between body dissatisfaction, eating disorders, and other mental health issues.
Do you think, given all the time this has been a quote-unquote issue, they would have figured out a healthy way to alleviate the problem?
That's true.
Because this is not a new issue. I remember Sports Illustrated getting bad press in the 90s because, oh my God, they have a swimsuit issue, and they're airbrushed. That's not a natural body.
That's right.
Think about the little girls.
I'm going to try to get through this next pronouncement without breaking down laughing. But the Body Appreciation Week, you should know, is scheduled for the 24th next week, next Monday, through the 27th. The whole week of appreciating the body. Events include an
all-you-can-eat buffet.
I love it. Awards show-themed body appreciation pop-up, where students can make their own, quote, affirmation mirror or compliment. Oh, my God, I'm sorry. Compliment jar. What does that mean? You just stick your own, like, self-compliments in the jar?
When I'm feeling really bad, I go to the jar and pull out a compliment, and I read it. And I just ignore the fact that it's in my own handwriting telling me something nice. And I feel better. This is the kind of mental gymnastics those on the left jump through every day just to feel normal, like you and I do just by existing.
I must not understand what the purpose of college is. That's just, I'm out on another plane on that one. I thought it was to educate, inform, confer knowledge so that one could be prepared to graduate, enter the workforce, produce, contribute to society, be self-sustaining.
No. It's coloring and bubbles and arts and crafts. You can build your own affirmation mirror.
Oh, gosh.
That's higher ed.
So the week...
Welcome to the world of academia.
That's why it's all screwed up. But don't worry, because your tax money's funding student loans for this purpose.
And in fairness, while all of those people are doing all that and wasting all their parents' or the taxpayers' dollars, there are people that are legitimately studying and legitimately becoming successful people that actually benefit society. It's just academia is built around this whole mindset of, and you wind up with some departments that actually benefit society and some departments that just benefit themselves.
Boy, ain't that the truth. Well, to your point, academically, quote, fat studies has become a subject of college courses, academic journals, and debates at many higher education institutions. Fat studies.
As a fat guy, I can say that's stupid.
The book, that's right. There's a professor, Rika Nath, is coming in to discuss her book, Why It's Okay to Be Fat. The book challenges dominant cultural views of fatness as a moral failing or a medical problem to be fixed. Nath critiques pervasive anti-fat biases.
What's the name again?
Why It's Okay to Be Fat.
What's the author's name again? I have to know something.
It could be Rekha, R-E-K-H-A, Nath, N-A-T-H. That's the last name of this august professor. So, in the book,
if it's okay to be fat, why isn't she?
Evidently, you found her.
Just a question.
So she's criticizing. I got to tell you, I never heard of this one. Sizeism. What the heck's that?
Well, when the old favorites of racism and sexism and all the other isms get tired because of Chicken Little syndrome, you got to come up with some new ones.
I reckon. Thinking about that, this crash where a Delta plane flipped over up there in Canada. It's not surprising, is it, that Chuck Schumer and the leftist brigade have come out and they're condemning President Trump. It's his fault for gutting the FAA. Excuse me, this was Canada. Now, if Canada became the 51st state, then maybe your argument has a teeny tiny infinitesimal amount of weight. But I on second thought, no, it really doesn't. That's stupid. It had nothing to do with that. But it doesn't matter. They are attempting at least to be relevant and argue that the president is just worsening things across every specter of society, and they're just wrong about it. Of course they are. I give you an example. I think this is kind of exciting, honestly. The president, what'd you hear him say over and over and over again on the campaign trail? Drill, baby, drill. So yesterday he vowed to revive a pipeline that connects Pennsylvania, which is absolutely overflowing, shall we say, underground with natural gas and oil that is subject to being fracked for extraction. Well, he vowed yesterday to revive what's called the Constitution Pipeline. It will connect Pennsylvania and its rich natural gas deposits to the state of New York, which is paying a premium for natural gas. This is what's interesting, Rhino. Both the Democrat governor of Pennsylvania, one Josh Shapiro, and, of course, Kathy Hochul of New York, they're agreeing to this. Did they lose their climate change card, or what's the deal? So this is good news. This should lower energy prices in the Northeast. We're stepping aside for a break, just getting started. Joseph McCabe, CEO and president of Auto Forecast, joins Middays at 10:35. At 11:05, Secretary of State Michael Watson. Stick around. We're coming right back.
1 in 4.
This segment of Middays with Gerard Gibert is brought to you by Covington County Hospital in Collins, where your health matters.
Gerard Gibert.
He keeps his classified documents right where they belong.
Inside a Journey record jacket from the 1980s.
Gerard Gibert, SuperTalk Mississippi.
Oh, you gonna take me home tonight? Oh, down beside that red firelight. Oh, you gonna let it all hang out, fat bottom girls. You make the rockin' world go round.
Inspired by the prior segment as well as Kirk from Columbus. Queen, the great Freddie Mercury, Fat Bottom Girl. By the way, yesterday after the show, you informed me that there's an update on the probability of the meteor.
Oh, there's been an update since that update.
Oh, my gosh. Well, when I announced it, what was it, 2.1% probability?
I think it had been gone. It had moved up from a 2.1 to a 2.4 was
okay.
The news. And then it went up from 2.4 to 2.7, and now it's gone up from 2.7 to 3.1.
Wow. In what year?
2032.
32. Gotcha.
They've already got a supposed flight path of it as far as where it could potentially land on the globe.
Okay.
Thankfully for the United States and the northern hemisphere, it looks like it would land in the southern hemisphere. But that doesn't help much if you're living in the southern hemisphere, because there are, I believe, 6 or 7 of the world, some of the world's most populated cities, in the path of destruction. And it's not a quote-unquote planet killer or dinosaur killer. It's not miles across. It's 150, 200 feet across.
Oh.
It would definitely devastate a city, especially a large city if it hit it. I think the estimated impact at this point, with given its speed, would be about 500 times the bombs that were dropped in World War II on Hiroshima and Nagasaki.
I wonder if we have a way to mitigate the path, to alter the path. So
if
that
I'm not mistaken, NASA has already tested at least one idea for deflecting an asteroid.
Okay.
I want to say China is planning on testing their idea, which is probably our idea, just rebranded to their idea, in 2026 or 2027.
Just add that to the plate of Elon Musk and company, right?
He's got till 2032. to train the guys from the oil rig how to fly a spacecraft.
There you go. With respect to our discussion in the last segment about no diet talk at the University of Alabama, and what's the name of that week they're having? The Body Appreciation Week. On the C Spire text line, it was sponsored by Taco Casa. Amanda from Pike County says, ban Barbie too. She ain't real.
It's just more evidence that this is not a new argument. It just seems like academia finally bought it hook, line, and sinker.
Jerry in Pontotoc says, I thought all Alabama cared about was their football team. Roll Tide. Man, oh man.
I would make a joke about rolling, but I'll be nice.
It's about indoctrination on the C Spire text line. I got a PhD in fat on the 662. Randy in Starkville, what do we got here? I use my mom's last name instead of my father's, a feminist. You mean your grandfather's last name? That's awesome. I was 16 in Jackson, Tennessee. It was 16, pardon me, at 5:30 this morning. That's pretty dang cold.
That's chilly.
Yeah. If a deer jumps out in the highway and gets hit, it's Trump's fault. Sure seems like it, doesn't it, CC in Senatobia? Send Bruce Willis to drill a hole in it and set a bomb off. Okay, that'll work for me, too. Talking about the meteor headed our way.
Can we at least get Bruce off of it this time before he has to blow up the bomb?
That's true. Meantime, you know, it's kind of hard, is it not, Rhino, to keep up with all the decisions from judges. There's so much being contested because the president has been in place for
there's so much getting contested because there's so much that's gotten accomplished.
Yeah, a month effective tomorrow, right? It will have been a month, and it's been happening at breakneck pace, and they're having a hard time keeping up with it. Honestly, I have a hard time keeping up with the various judicial decisions. But the latest one that occurred last evening is that a judge denied the Democrat-led effort to block Doge access, said, look, I just don't see any harm that might be inflicted by them having access to critical data necessary to understand where all the dang money's going. I mean, that's all that's happening now. And the first thing they dig out is, wait, for over 20 years, we've dispersed $4.7 trillion. We don't know where it went. So I guess if you think about it, the Pentagon, it's like $2.5 trillion they can't find.
That they're willing to admit.
That's true. I think once you add it up and you compare that to the $36 trillion in debt, it's a sizable chunk of the debt that cannot be properly accounted for. Unfortunately, all those likely responsible for it, gone, and gone. The Social Security Administration's head, she stepped down just because the Doge folks said, look, you got all these people who are dead on your rolls. Now, it's been determined that only a sliver of them were getting benefits, but it opens the door up for it. It's also been determined, there's been some insiders you've probably seen that have blown the whistle, said they were incentivized to qualify illegals for long-term disability. Now, this is crazy, folks. In this country, law permits illegals to receive Social Security disability benefits. They can't receive retirement benefits. Now, if they have work visas and they're here legitimately to work and they pay in for 10 years, they do qualify for Social Security benefits, but they're paying in for that. Disability is a different matter altogether. And these whistleblowers came out that work for Social Security Administration, said they instructed us to try to identify, to try to get the client, because the client, of course, is talking about the illegals, because once they arrive here, they're now called clients. That's what the Democrats think about illegals crossing our border. They told us that we needed to talk to the client and ask them if they had any headaches, recurring headaches, lower back problems, anything that would qualify them for Social Security disability, long-term disability, not short-term benefits. It's insanity. You don't even need a Social Security number. Actually, they were instructed in the meeting that one of the things they were supposed to do was sign them up for Social Security. Unbelievable, man. Unbelievable. Is there any doubt at this point that the Democrats hold illegals, honestly, and criminals as well, in higher regard than law-abiding, tax-paying American citizens? Is there any doubt at this point?
None whatsoever.
Zero. It's despicable. It's shameful, disgraceful. I don't have enough adjectives to describe it.
In fact, it could be argued that it's not just a matter of they prioritize those that deserve less than the average American over the average American. It's that they treat the average American with disdain.
That's true. The only exception I would make to this, of course, Rhino, would be Americans that fit into certain categories of the disadvantaged.
Even then, they're just taking advantage of their gullibility.
That's true. That's absolutely true. It's insane for them to draw Social Security as well. I hear you, but if they come into the country, they legitimately work, they have work visas, and they pay into the system because they're required to do so, they're contributing. That's different. Now, we could argue about should they have been granted a work visa. That's where the argument is. But if they're going to pay taxes, that helps all of us, honestly. And if they're legitimately working, you want to see them undergo the normal process to become a citizen. No problem with that. But just to show up and them try to manipulate and finagle the system to get them on long-term disability where they paid zero in?
That's just one facet of the Democrats enabling manipulation of the system.
And that's what is being exposed. The gravy train.
I mean, they wouldn't even be here without Democrats helping them get here in the first place.
Totally true. I agree with you. I'm on board with you. I'm just making the point that it's a little nuanced that, okay, you like everybody else, you got to pay in, and then you're eligible for retirement. You paid in to earn that just like anybody else who's a legitimate citizen does. And you're here because you got a work visa. You're contributing, you're working. I just believe that they ought to, again, undergo the process as expediently as possible to become a citizen if they meet all the requirements and they're approved. All right. The great Steve Perry. This probably showcases his one-of-a-kind voice, maybe more than any other tune he's ever recorded. We're coming right back with Joseph McCabe. Stay with us.
The stories that matter most to Mississippians. Gerard Gibert.
Middays with Gerard.
SuperTalk Mississippi.
Chewing on a piece of grass, walking down the road.
Welcome back, everyone. A little America Ventura Highway. You ever ridden on the Ventura Highway? It really is pretty neat. Appreciate that, Rhino. We welcome now Joe McCabe. He's president and CEO of Auto Forecast Solutions. Hey, Joe, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So tell us what you got going on today. You've got an event, Automotive Insider, right? That's going to be held at the Butler Snow facility. What's that all about?
Yeah, that's correct. So our company, we forecast every vehicle built worldwide for the next decade. Who builds it, where, when, how many. It's our job to keep you sort of abreast of what's going on in the industry. And they're coming in, and we're going to talk about what the real story is in the auto industry from, today all the way forward. Tariff issues, China, electrification, you name it, across the board.
So your organization examines and processes all of those various inputs. I mean, there are a ton of them because it's a huge industry, and of course, it's a global industry, and it's unique in that there are a whole bunch of components in a vehicle, and so there's lots of integration and lots of relationships and lots of relationships and reliance on suppliers, right, of all these elements and components that are part of the final assembly process of the actual manufacture. You got geopolitical events, tariffs, fiscal policy, taxes, financing, interest rates, all the above figure into this industry. I'm sure I left something out, but is that what you guys do, is try to process all that and forecast where it's going?
Yeah, Gerard, that's the short list.
Exactly.
It's a 7-day week job, especially now. I mean, we were watching every single day for changes. This is a very fast-paced news cycle when it comes to what's going on in the industry. The problem is automotive is a glacial speed market. I mean, suppliers, like you called out, they're bidding on vehicles that won't be built for 3 years from today. Yet we're embedded in this really volatile process of tariffs in China and EVs that never took off. We never drank the EV Kool-Aid. We said, look, electrification is one arrow in the quiver of your portfolio, right? It's got to be a solution, not the only solution. And when governments and environmentalists drive an agenda that is polar opposite from consumers, that's very difficult because, like you said, you have to align hundreds, if not thousands, of suppliers to build a car. And if you're constantly changing the goalpost and saying, wait a second, we're not going to build 100,000, we're going to build 50,000, and people put millions of dollars into planning their production capacity, it's a big problem out there. And you see a lot of suppliers that will just go out of business because they can't properly plan. Our job is to give them, get rid of the noise and say, look, here's what's going on. You got to stay the path. You got to really focus on what your business is and how you can make money at it. And that's hopefully we're going to guide people on today.
What brings you to Mississippi specifically, Joe?
Yeah, so we were invited here by MAMA, the Mississippi Automotive Manufacturers Association, to come in and really speak this to the audience about how this is going to impact Mississippi, but not only Mississippi, but the Southeast and the whole country and the world. You got the issues with Mexico. You got the issues with the threat of the Chinese coming in and potentially cannibalizing some North American consumers. You got massive tariff issues going on. I mean, you got plants here with Toyota and Nissan that are highly exposed because of their Japanese-based company, that there's a significant amount of product that are coming across borders to satisfy that build. Yeah. And they got to look and say, how is this going to help me not lose money and also make money the same day when I have to plan around all this potential uncertainty?
And we've got significant automotive manufacturing facilities to our east in Alabama as well, right?
Yeah, I mean, when you think about the big pocket in the last 10 years, the Southeast has just really burgeoned in terms of a great space. And a lot of it because it's a great labor pool in the Southeast. Yeah. And they really want to tap into the workers and the community. And once you have a vehicle manufacturer set up a shop, the suppliers all follow because they follow this just-in-time process. Say, look, I make a seat, I'm going to be an hour away from this facility because, hey, you, GM or Ford or Volkswagen, whatever, don't want to keep the inventory. We got to get to you in time. But during that whole process of this insanity of people saying, hey, we want to build 17 different vehicles and half going to be electric vehicles, yeah, but no one's really buying them. And how do you really satisfy all of these audiences out here? We have a new government in place that's saying, look, we're going to dial that back. We want to look at manufacturers should be able to build what a consumer wants. We're not turning a blind eye to the environment. We're not going to walk away and put smokestacks everywhere and fire coal up in every state again. But you got to look at this idea where these are publicly traded companies. And they have to satisfy shareholder value. A consumer is a means to an end. And when we get there, we have to say, how are we going to get there in a logical manner?
Well, as a former entrepreneur, I came to the conclusion a few decades ago, it's faith, confidence, and certainty. That's what drives business decision-making and underpins business decision-making. It's what drives investment, risk-taking, employment, expansion, or the lack thereof. And when you've got such a volatile scenario that appears as what we have today, are we seeing perhaps some just freezing of plans as a result of that?
Oh, yeah. Uncertainty means stop all presses, right? I have to put in millions of dollars investment into capacity and new tooling and a future product. But if I don't know what that's going to be, because I'm going to be impacted by political agendas, I'm going to be impacted by environmentalist agendas, it basically makes me put a screeching halt to that. And when you put a screeching halt to that, innovation stops. So right now we're in that limbo phase of, we have threats of tariffs. What is a threat of tariffs really? They're not gone. They're just being delayed.
Right.
So if we tariff, it's going to go on Mexico. We have a significant parts coming up, or Canada and all that. What does that mean? Well, you got to build in the U.S., but you can't do it tomorrow.
Right. I heard
These
the president.
Very big pieces.
Yeah, I heard the president talk about this morning. He was asked at a press conference. Actually, it was yesterday, about future tariffs plan, like in the short term, as you know, which would include the automobile manufacturing industry as well. And he said, "Do you have a number?" The question was, "Do you have a number in mind?" He said, "Well, 25% or higher." And he said, of course, and I think his goal, he made this point in answering that question, we want to recruit those companies to build their vehicles, or even probably more importantly, the components that they supply to the manufacturing process in this country, thus avoiding tariffs.
Yeah, globalization has a positive and a negative effect. Allows us to use certain countries for low-cost labor, low-cost products, but that sort of catches us in the act where we're saying, yeah, but we want to bring everything to the United States. We can't have both.
Yeah.
So you need a very healthy balance. But this is, we're not playing SimCity here. I mean, this is big pieces. This is manufacturing facilities we've got to put in. This is labor. This is getting some materials and supply chains aligned. There is a ton of moving parts. The long game being, hey, more U.S. build. What Trump's doing is USMCA is out there. It's up for 2026 negotiation again. And he wants to basically say, okay, that was NAFTA 2.0. I want to make NAFTA 3.0. And I'm going to make it much more favorable to the U.S. And before I do that, though, I'm going to handcuff everyone that's not saying the U.S. first. So we're going to have some pain in the short term, but there is a long-term agenda actually bringing manufacturing back to the United States.
Yeah, and I think it would be likely much more sophisticated and more technologically advanced, Joe, and likely require fewer humans to be part of the manufacturing process.
That's a healthy balance, right? Because you have unions saying that's great, bring the jobs, and then you say, but robots are going to do it. They're going to say, well, where's everyone's got to win in this, and not everyone can win. So you're right. These are one of 17 different questions that are still hanging out there in the ether about how we're going to get this done. But the idea of bringing stuff back and less reliance on foreign. We saw in COVID. We saw it during chips. Hey, Taiwan held all the chips. China holds all the minerals. Right? We basically create a problem for ourselves. And now we have to dial that back and say, maybe it's not a 180 we got to do, but there's got to be something we got to change, because this current pace, we are really hurting the competitiveness of the U.S. and the North American market. Yeah,
and Joe, I believe this goes back to perhaps the 60s, 70s, and to a great deal the 80s, when a lot of the high-profile consulting firms were advising all these big companies, pharmaceutical companies, automobile manufacturers. You could outsource this stuff and embrace globalization, as you put it, right? And drive costs down and increase profitability.
Yeah, and it's not just that. It's also Wall Street. Wall Street rewards all these new players that come in that have no product. Rivian came on the market. They were worth 10 times GM on day one with no product.
With nothing. And
because everyone thinks here's the next Tesla, right?
Yeah, that's really good. So we appreciate you coming on. I know you guys will have a good meeting as you provide some insight and advise the manufacturing community, the automobile manufacturing community in the state of Mississippi. Appreciate you being here, Joe, and thanks for coming on the program.
Thank you, Gerard. Anytime.
You bet. We're coming right back in the Element Wealth studio.
Middays with Gerard.
Good for America. Good for fans of justice and truth. Good for us.
SuperTalk Mississippi.
This is what we stand for.
Yes, another quintessential 80s tune, Johnny Hates Jazz. Where'd they come up with that?
Maybe they knew somebody with named Johnny that just could not stand jazz.
Shattered Dreams, of course, the name of that great tune. Appreciate that. That was from the all-hit request line, as was Ventura Highway by America. Bumped us out of the prior segment. Kevin in Pontotoc says that Dems need USAID to grease the palms for folks to go along with their sick ideologies. They can't sell them on the merits of their ideas or policies. Without their payouts, their ideas will be rejected by the masses. And that's clearly happening, Kevin. I agree. It happened on Election Day. It's happening now. But they're still leaning into it, as they say.
Have you noticed that the protests are markedly smaller in size, and there seem to be less pre-printed posters for the people to hold up?
I have, but they sure can create some stupid songs, though, can't they?
Oh, yeah. I think I saved one somewhere around here that I really wanted to highlight that showed the depths of creativity. Here it is, yes. The depths of creativity from those on the left who are just ate up with stupid.
Gave them energy. Gave them energy. Gave them energy. Gave them energy.
What the?
And that's it.
I guess that makes them feel good about themselves there, right? It's all about the old feelings. Oh, my gosh. It's just incredible. All right, so here at home, you know, we got this tax debate going on between the House and the Senate. Yesterday, we were fortunate to have Speaker of the House, Jason White, on the morning show with Richard Cross, and he was making his case for the House bill, which would fully eliminate the income tax, albeit over 10 years, versus the Senate bill. We had Senator Josh Harkins, who runs that Finance Committee in the Senate, yesterday on Middays discussing the Senate's proposal, which stops short of full elimination, does not increase the Senate bill, does not increase the general sales tax, would decrease the sales tax on grocery, would increase the excise taxes on fuel. Well, there's buzz around, Rhino, that the governor, Tate Reeves, who has prioritized, not just this year, but even part of his campaign when he was reelected in 23, to fully eliminate the income tax. He said there's a rumor. I haven't seen any direct quote from him, but there's a rumor that's being reported that he may call a special session to get the income tax eliminated. I'm not sure the votes exist to do that in the Senate. You know, he went to social media and really blasted the Senate proposal. This was yesterday. He said it doesn't get anywhere near eliminating the income tax, so it's a non-starter for me. This is what he wrote on Facebook and X. I'm beginning to believe that there is someone in the Senate that is philosophically opposed to eliminating the income tax. I'll take it a step further than that. There's more than a someone. There are numerous senators that have concerns about this. And in fact, when they were looking at reducing the sales tax on groceries even further in the Senate, or eliminating the income tax even further, proposing an offset as the House has done, albeit a smaller one, in the form of an increase in the general sales tax. It's my understanding that the members in the Senate would not agree to any legislation that would increase the general sales tax by any amount whatsoever. And without doing that, it's virtually impossible to eliminate the income tax to make ends meet, to balance the budget, especially when you consider what's in store for us. And I think that is likely to be a loss of significant federal funding for the Medicaid program, for education, for health, at a minimum. And that's going to put big-time pressure on the states to have to cover some of those expenses. And that needs revenue. Of course, you can cut elsewhere. Then the question is, where do you cut? What do you cut? Again, these are concepts, these are issues that they're grappling with down there at the Capitol. Thomas in Greenwood, no, that won't help. In fact, Thomas, you know what I think where you're wrong here is? He says, yeah, we need to have special sessions so we can force a vote. I think we're going to get a vote anyway, because I think we're going to end up in conference and you're going to see what each chamber thinks about the other chamber's proposal. Thomas, you'd be surprised to know everybody doesn't think like you do. And there would be many who would be lauded, praised, and would strengthen their position in the next election cycle for opposing the House bill to fully eliminate the income tax. It is a very contentious, controversial, polarized issue. Coming right back with Secretary of State Michael Watson.
Of Middays with Gerard Gibert is brought to you by the Mississippi Business Journal. Visit msbusinessjournal.com. Scott Coopwood, publisher. And now, another hour of the talk that keeps Mississippi talking. Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Begin your transition now.
Now on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It is Middays live from the Element Wealth studio on this
Hump Day.
We're pleased to welcome now the Secretary of State of the great state of Mississippi, Michael Watson. Mr. Secretary, good to see you. Thanks for coming in.
Great to be with you, my friend, always. Appreciate the good work that you do. And Rhino.
Yeah, absolutely, Rhino. So we do want to pass on to you. We were just informed that the Lieutenant Governor has looked like he fainted in the chamber there, standing at the podium, presiding over the Senate, as the Lieutenant Governor does. And we don't have any other details other than that, but we did want to pass that on, that can be confirmed, people there on the scene, video and so forth. And, man, we hope everything's okay with the Lieutenant Governor. We saw the video of it, and it's kind of wrenching.
Could we maybe take a quick break?
Yeah.
Lord, thank you for this day. As we have seen our Lieutenant Governor collapse at the podium, Lord, I pray that you would bless him, give him the strength he needs, provide him with whatever medical attention he needs, and I pray that you would lift him up and his family. Lord, support Miss Lynn in this as well. Look forward to a great report, and look forward to him getting back to work as soon as possible. In your name we pray. Amen.
Appreciate that, Mr. Secretary. Very appropriate. Good word. So, just wanted to pass that on. Okay, let's turn our attention to what's going on in the Secretary of State's office, the legislature in session. Let's start with any particular legislation you guys need there.
Yeah, we've worked on a few pieces of legislation this year. It's actually been a couple of years running now, and you and I have talked about this before, but campaign finance reform. It's one of the things that we looked at coming into 20 and the process through 2024. And let me say thank you to the legislature. They've done a fantastic job in passing our election integrity pieces. And I think this is kind of one of the last pieces to the puzzle. And this is the back end that people don't really pay much attention to. But I think it's really important for us to make sure that we've got a clear understanding of campaign finance reports, an easy way to search them, making sure that everybody's playing by the same rules, and then enforcement on the back end. So we've put a piece of legislation together that we've worked on a couple of years now. Last year, it got a little bit sideways. This year, it's starting to get a little more traction. So we're excited about that. Appreciate Senator England pushing that through for us on the Senate side. So we're going to keep working with that on the House side and see what else we can accomplish with it. That's really the biggest piece on elections for us.
Okay.
The second component there would be tidelands. We've talked a little bit about this along the coast.
Yep.
A really important piece. It is state property, and it is our job as a Secretary of State, as a trustee over the public trust tidelands, to make sure that those properties, those parcels, that land, the subject to the tidal flow, are protected, conserved, and when there are chances for economic development, let's make sure we do that wisely. But Mississippians need to get a just return on those properties. So we're working on that to get some clarification on whose job is what, to make sure that, the cities and the state and the county and other entities can work well together. There's been a lot of lawsuits that have been filed, as you've probably seen on the coast. So we're trying to get that cleaned up so we can end the lawsuits. Big thing for the state. A lot of people don't know much about tidelands, but it's a big issue for us along the coast, so we want to get that cleaned up. Other than those two really big pieces, there are some smaller things that we're working on, but those are probably the headliners for us.
Okay. So the campaign finance reform, do we have some problems there that we're trying to address? I mean, specifically, there's no secret that right where we are, the city of Jackson here, there's been lots of questions about the finance reports that have been filed by the mayor.
Just filed, by the way.
Right.
And that's one of the issues. So for folks that have been following that, he did not file his campaign finance reports for quite some time. And we passed some legislation last year with the help of the legislature. But basically now when an individual wants to run for office, if they're not up to speed on their campaign finance reports, they are not to be qualified.
Okay.
That's an important hook. That's what forced the mayor this time. He had to file his reports in order for him to be qualified to run. And there are questions about those reports, and I'll let other people dig through that. But the point is, again, that seems like a small little hook. Oh, that's easy. Well, when people aren't filing their reports, you can't hold them accountable. And that's what we've seen in the city of Jackson issue. So This is a broader, what we wanted to do was, let's take FEC. Great example. You can easily search the FEC reports on federal campaign finance. You can. It's simple. So we want to bring that system to Mississippi. You may recall we shut down the online filing portal here in Mississippi because it was built on a system that is now 20 years old. Computers well. It was built probably about 10 or so years ago. It was an add-on to what system we had. So we've gone through the RFP process now, and we're working on building a new system. And what it would do is house a statewide campaign finance report system. From the dog catcher on up to the governor, everyone would file online. So it'd be easily searchable.
Because it's not good now.
Yeah. Here's one. I heard a comment the other day that was said in the Capitol. And basically it was a legislator who said, well, if somebody wants to look at my reports, they can go get them offline and pull them offline and read them on the papers. Why not make it easy for them? Just to go search really easy, It doesn't have to be hard. This is simple. So then we heard, well, not everybody has a computer. So I went over to the Ethics Commission and talked to them about the Statement of Economic Interest that all elected officials have to file. And there are only about 20 folks that don't file it online. So if you can file that online, you can file your campaign finance report online. So I asked them, well, what do you do with the folks that don't file it online? We fill it out for them and upload it online. And I said, well, we'll be willing to do that to the Secretary of State's office. There are 20 folks out there. You sign an affidavit that you don't have access to the internet. I'll do it for you.
Yeah.
Fine. The point there is that Mississippians deserve to know who's giving who money.
Sure.
Our votes changing based on that money that's changing hands. Our positions changing. That's the ultimate back-end accountability for our elected officials. So we're trying to make it easy for them to do that. This would make them file online reports. As the bill is now coming out of the Senate, it went from shall to may. So usually
shall to may. Okay, so it's kind of optional.
You know what that means. The same system right now was a may, and not a lot of folks were using it. Some folks started using it, and there were some errors, and that's why I shut it down, because it was built on an old system. But with this new system, it's going to be easily searchable, readily for our individuals to file on it, and it'd be statewide. Every elected official would file on it. The circuit clerks, municipal clerks would be in charge of the municipal folks filing to make sure that on our system that have access to our system, similar to like SIMS now, where circuit clerks can go in and look at SIMS, have access to it. Same way all the way up, and then obviously statewide, we would be looking at their reports when they file them. The second piece of this is, how do you enforce these laws? as you know now, it's a system where the Ethics Commission has a role, we have a role, and the Attorney General's office has a role. Well, the buck sometimes falls off the plate, and it isn't quite done correctly. We saw some of that in the history here in the last few years. So what we have done is let's streamline that under our umbrella, under the Secretary of State's office. The AG will still have their role of prosecuting should something come out of it. We would send them notice if somebody messed up. They'd have 5 days to tell us, hey, we're going to handle this, or then we could go to the local prosecutor. So it maintains a sense of streamlined enforcement mechanism all under one roof. And it's not this, hey, let me punish this guy or that girl. It is, here's what the law says. Did you file your report?
Right.
Did you not file your report, or did you say this amount of money came from someone here and it actually came from over here? We could do some investigations if there was a credible lead to that. It just brings more enforcement and accountability to the entire process.
Well, and it makes it accessible to the public, which they should be able to access on a timely basis.
That's exactly right.
As well.
That's the whole goal.
So, if I'm not mistaken, a fair amount of it requires manual entry on your part. Is that correct?
Well, so that's one of the issues now. The may, when they change from shall to may, you may file it online. But we're going to have now, think about this. If we've got all municipalities with 300 roughly or so, I think maybe north of that number, you've got county elections, you've got state elections, you've got whatever. Every candidate in all of these offices are now going to be sending their reports to us. We're going to have to then scan them in, put them on the system. You talk about taking some time, that's going to take forever.
Yeah.
So we're working through that now. Can we maybe include some language that says, you know what, for Pascagoula, that municipal clerk's going to have to upload each of their candidates running for office to our system, so we don't have to do it ourselves. So we're working through that. That's not in legislation now, but something we need to address.
It makes sense to me. I mean, totally does. So, okay, so let's turn our attention to voting. You know, there's a bill that's received lots of attention from Senator Jeremy England, who I believe took your seat in the Senate when you became Secretary of State. And this bill would essentially allow no excuse early voting 15 days prior to Election Day, currently in the state of Mississippi. And by the way, all this is detailed on the Secretary of State's website. Mm-hmm. Very informative because I researched it. But there are 10 valid excuses presently in our law for absentee voting, excuse-based absentee voting. Those are very explicit. 45 days presently in the state of Mississippi. This would convert that to 15 days, no excuse, but the voting process would essentially be the same way that it is on Election Day, right?
Pretty much. We can walk
okay, let's talk about it on the other side of the break. I'm interested in hearing your analysis of that. Secretary of State Michael Watson is in the Element Well studio. We'll be right back.
The talk that keeps Mississippi talking.
We're rolling. Hit it. Go. Play it.
Middays with Gerard Gibert on SuperTalk Mississippi.
We're back with you in the Element Well studio. Again, just want to pass on that Lieutenant Governor Delbert Hosemann did pass out on the Senate floor. He was presiding over the chamber with business in process. We don't have any other details at this point other than I believe he is conscious and seems to be recovering. And so we are certainly praying for his full recovery and that everything's okay. And we appreciate Secretary of State Michael Watson for kicking off our segment with a prayer. Asking the Lord above for comfort and full recovery for the Lieutenant Governor. So, all right, Mr. Secretary, before we went to break, we were talking about this early voting bill. Senator Jeremy England has actually got passed in the Senate. Not sure what the fate of that legislation is in the House. Haven't heard much from the House of it. I felt like I accurately described how it would change the current system. And by the way, a common question that comes up is, okay, would this change or alter any way the current mail-in voting, absentee mail-in voting? I think the answer is no, right?
It would not.
No change whatsoever.
Yeah, that's been one of my questions, and I talked to Chairman England last year and told him, look, if you're going to do this, why don't we go ahead and take some of these mail-in options away? You've got 15 days for whatever reason you want. You can go early vote. Well, let's take down some of the mail-in voting, which is where we see typically more fraud than anywhere else.
Yeah.
So perhaps we can get that done in the other chamber and see if there's an agreement on that. There are two versions right now. One from the House, as I understand it, they would have the 45 days of no excuse in person.
In the House?
In the House. So, but it'd be in person, and it'd be it would have the excuses, but it would be without the envelopes. So you would actually vote on the machine, so making it a little bit cleaner, a little bit more
secure, I think,
and a little bit more secure. You don't go through the envelopes. I was talking to Representative Holland this morning, and the technicalities when people maybe not sign across the flap. I hate that. The law is a law, but I hate that someone's vote gets tossed out just simply because they made a little bit of an error on the envelope.
The route of their ink pen.
That's right.
Essentially.
So that would clean that issue up. I think that's probably a good idea. On early voting itself, the way that it currently would work. So right now you have 45 days of absentee voting. There are specifically 9 reasons, but one of them is there are 2 reasons in the same one. So it makes 10.
That's where I got 10.
So you're right. And there are 4 reasons for mail. Okay. So those we'll set those aside. This would basically take out any excuse for in-person. So you would come in, you wouldn't have 45 days anymore, it would just be the 15 days for that piece. Mail would still exist. The mail-in voting would still exist for those 4 reasons.
Okay.
So it would be in clerk's offices. It would be administered by the clerks. Essentially what it would be is a precinct within the clerk's office. Now, one of the issues here is you get this small county courthouse, and if people shifted more from going in person because they knew now they could early vote, you're going to swamp these clerk's offices. They're going to need more help, which requires more money, which requires some of the security issues. Then we better nail these down on the front end before they get there. So the logistics piece is what's really concerning to me. In person in a clerk's office is probably, I wouldn't say probably, is the second, safest vote that there is. On election day, in the precinct, without a doubt, is the safest vote cast.
Okay.
I'm a bit old school. I love that. So anything that takes away from that, I typically would approach with a little bit of caution. I'm not saying you can't do it correctly. Look at Florida. Look at other states that have done a great job with it. So I get that. If people want to support that, that's a debate for the legislature and the people of Mississippi. If the legislature tells me to do it, then we're going to do our best to make it secure. So that's the second safest vote. I get it. You want to make sure you got good clerks in office that are going to be overseeing this process. The question becomes then, how many people are going to switch from voting on election day to early voting? If that's a big number, you are going to have logistics nightmares for our circuit clerks. They have voiced that to me, and so I've told Senator England and a few others, you better address these logistics on the front end because you're going to have a hard time with our clerk's offices if this thing grows to what we may expect. Early voting does not increase turnout. You will not see a large increase of people coming to vote. That just doesn't happen. There's not a report out there that says that's the case. It's a convenient factor. And so if it's more convenient, you have more people coming in. That's the piece where the logistics questions are going to come in. Those aren't specifically addressed in the bill. So that's something that we're going to have to deal with. The question then becomes, well, do you do it regulatory at the Secretary of State's office, or do we want to make sure we kind of nail it down in the legislation? It depends on how you look at things. I prefer it being nailed down in legislation. I don't know who the next Secretary of State will be. Maybe a great person. Who knows? But as long as we have some faith and understanding of the rules and regulations that can make it safe, that's my position. I want to make it as safe as possible. So, legislature sends it over, then we will deal with it then.
Yeah. So, I guess one question that comes to mind is you pointed out rightly that numerous other states, I think it's 47 if I'm not mistaken, have some form of early voting, right, for some period of time.
Yeah, so let's clear that up.
Okay.
47 states have some type of voting before Election Day.
Okay.
Is it absentee with excuse? Is it pure early voting with no excuse? I think that's where the numbers change a little bit.
Right.
But for the global understanding of can people vote before Election Day, 47 states have some type of that.
Okay.
It may not be early voting. It may be absentee with an excuse, but
yeah. All right. So let's look at Florida. You mentioned them. They're a big state. What, third, fourth largest population wise in the country. how do they handle it? I get it. I'm concerned as well about the mechanics aspect of this, right, and the circuit clerks having sufficient resources, space, et cetera. How did they deal with that? When they implemented that, did they appropriate more money to the circuit clerks to handle that, for example?
I'm not sure what they did on that part, but Secretary Byrd's a great friend, a really good guy down there in Florida, does a good job. They are able to process theirs on their front end.
Yes,
prior to,
we can here.
Right. We can't start until 7 o'clock.
7 o'clock on Election Day. I know it well.
So, yeah, that takes a little bit of time. That's how Florida and other states are actually...
Yeah, they've got it
earlier with their results because they can process them beforehand. So that's another thing that we should probably deal with later on. But that's kind of how you get that quick result out of Florida. We don't do that, which is a little bit of a delay. We still do a pretty good job, I would say, on election night.
But we don't get overwhelmed with the number of absentee ballots the way they do because they have the no excuse voting.
But if I remember correctly, I think roughly 70% of Floridians voted before Election Day in the last election.
Yes.
So it's a massive number.
But they have a longer period, do they not?
They do. And so if you say, well, do we have that switch from Election Day to early voting? You better nail down those logistics.
Agree.
Because it's going to be a nightmare.
Completely agree with that. I completely agree with that.
So we've got to deal with that.
And you are right, because I got curious and researched this about there's no evidence that early voting and no excuse absentee voting actually increases voter turnout. Pew Research actually did a report on that. Mm-hmm. They're a pretty reputable research firm. In fact, their finding was just the opposite. They said that the overall turnout decreased, and they attributed that to there's just no build-up, the enthusiasm of the big bang of Election Day.
Well, and they also say, well, man, I got these 15 days. I'll do it tomorrow.
Exactly right.
I'll do it tomorrow.
That's exactly what they said.
Tomorrow. Oh, my gosh, Election Day was yesterday, and I forgot.
So, on the other hand, they did say same-day registration, which is a whole other can of worms, that increased overall turnout.
So that's an issue, too, one that I addressed last year and suggested that we move from 45 days down to 30 because technically Mississippi has 15 days of same-day registration right now. Because you have 30 days to register to vote. Early voting absentee voting starts 45 days out. There's a 15-day window I can walk in and register and then do my voting, and that's a question.
Okay, so one concern, one thing I would say about this particular proposal from Senator England that I think actually improves election integrity is that in this case, you go to the circuit clerk's office, you're handed a ballot, you scan your ballot just like you do on Election Day. You see your ballot being harvested, being captured, being accounted for, stored in that machine. Right now, as you know, the envelope, the signature gets stuck in a box somewhere in the circuit clerk's office. And I'm not saying that there's anything nefarious going on, but it opens up the door for problems. You don't actually see your vote being accounted for, right?
Yeah.
You're relying on that.
And the second thing is you got to show your ID. A lot of folks have talked about that. I got to go in the clerk's office. I got to show my ID so they can have the picture ID and make sure that I am who I say I am.
Absolutely.
You cast your ballot. It goes into a locked ballot box. You've got seal logs. You got other ways to make sure that that's kept clean. One of the things we talked about actually this morning, Calker Patrick, our Assistant Secretary of State of Elections, and Colby Williams, our policy guy.
Yeah.
On the regulatory side right there, let's make sure that two people are involved in that. Not just a clerk.
I completely agree with you.
But perhaps the head of elections commissioners.
It should be the same as when we're pulling those ballots out.
That's exactly right.
Can you stay? Or you got to go?
I think
I got one more. You stay for half a segment. I got another question for you on the other side of the break. I got a question that made me think about this as part of this bill coming up, and get your take on that. Secretary of State Michael Watson is our guest in the Element Well studio. We're coming right back.
Everybody ready?
I'm ready. Ready here.
Middays with Gerard Gibert on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Remember, last winter, I stood so tall and then fell down. She still stayed alive.
We are back with you in the Element Well studio with Secretary of State Michael Watson. Once again, want to pass on that Lieutenant Governor Delbert Hosemann did pass out in the chamber presiding over the Senate earlier today. What we've heard since then is that he's conscious, seems to be okay. That's about all we have at this point, and we appreciate the Secretary for offering a prayer as we kicked off our interview. So we were talking offline about just something that occurred to me, and I thought about perhaps a way to mitigate the risk, and the risk is this, that right now when you absentee vote, it's all paper, and the ballots, according to our law, are not scanned until we close the polls on Election Day.
Right.
Different from Florida, by the way, which is processing all
before.
And that's why you've seen this. That why does Florida have their tally before Arizona does? Because Arizona has laws like ours.
Right.
They get gazillions of mail-in absentee ballots that they can't even open until...
And more reasons.
There's crazy stuff going on, too. I'm not discounting that. Right. But the big distinction is Florida is processing, counting, tallying electronically all along as votes are being cast during the absentee period. And so by the time they start counting the votes cast on Election Day, they just add those up, boom, that's the tally.
That's right.
And in Mississippi, if we were to be overwhelmed with manual absentee ballots, we may find some delays. And I agree with you. You're right. Our elections folks are great at getting all those absentee ballots that are just
fantastic
paper documents that they scan. My concern is that during that 45-day period when folks are coming in or mailing in their ballots, and they're just stored in a box, right, in the envelope awaiting Election Day on the circuit clerk's premises, that we could experience, God forbid, some sort of loss, catastrophic loss of this office. Somebody could literally walk out with the boxes of the ballots to never be found again. Well, and we don't have any protection against that's the point.
Right. Yeah, we talked about that a little bit in the break there, and one of the things I recall, we had a hurricane during election season a couple years ago, so it's not that far-fetched of could this happen.
Okay.
I was in, I can't remember which county I was in this year on Election Day, but I stayed purposefully the entire night and watched them close up the ballot box, watched the procedure to make sure everything was done correctly.
Yeah.
So you've got two folks that have to sign off. They basically pull the jump drive. They've got a tape that came out of the machine. So in this instance, and I'm just thinking off the top of my head because you brought that up. Yeah. What if you've got the election commissioner, the head of the election commission comes in, they take the tape. The circuit clerk takes the jump drive. So you got two people, two separate folks.
Yeah.
You've got the seal logs. They recorded all the numbers, et cetera. Again, we probably need to think through this a little bit more. Yeah. Just off the top of my head, you got two folks then that have separate recordings of the same numbers on the same day. Started over the next day.
I'm with you.
We can think through that, but you're right. I think that's the piece of the logistics that I encouraged the chairman last year to think through those. I've, as you well know, I've done an 82 county tour with our clerks. We had legislators in our office this morning with poll books, machines, to show them the entire process, to let them understand this is what it may look like, to give them kind of a hands-on feel, got them to vote. I think Britney Spears won the best artist in Mississippi, but maybe, who knows where that came from. Jerry Rice won the best football player. But anyway, so, again, the logistics are so important. We've got to make sure we nail these things down.
I agree. It's just something that crossed my mind. I realize it's low risk, but we should always be thinking about any risk whatsoever. And we don't want to have a situation where, well, heck, we have a problem with the election here because a circuit clerk's office had their ballots destroyed and we can't account for them. Now, in many cases, it may not even matter because they know how many came in, and even if there's a candidate behind based on the tally. I get all that, but you could have one that's real close where, what's in those boxes makes a difference.
And the idea that we have seen tied races.
Right.
Every single vote counts. And you've got to protect that. And we've done such a good job, again, give the credit to the legislature on election integrity over the last 5 years. We cannot undercut that with maybe making a mistake with early voting.
Completely agree.
Got to get it right.
So maybe as a stepping stone, we could convert our mail-in and present excuse-based absentee ballot voting, I should say, to the process that you described, where we would have some sort of backup. That would improve that at a minimum.
Right.
Seems like that's pretty straightforward, and streamline the process on Election Day as well.
100%. And that's what it takes. It takes smart people thinking through this and talking through it together.
Yeah, I agree. Well, we got a lot of smart people in the state that can help with that kind of stuff.
We do.
We're blessed in that respect. I know you got to go. We appreciate you coming in, as always, Secretary of State Michael Watson. And thanks again for offering the prayer to start us off. We certainly want our Lieutenant Governor to fully recover and that he's checked out and good to go. Appreciate that.
Appreciate it, my friend.
Thank you, Secretary of State Michael Watson. So, and that's all we know, Rhino, at this point, I believe, about the Lieutenant Governor. I did see a message from our news department that we're expecting appreciate it, Mr. Secretary. We're expecting some sort of statement from the Lieutenant Governor's office, is what we're told. Sources have told our news department that he appeared to be conscious shortly after. Official statement from his office is coming soon. So as soon as we get that, folks, if it happens while we're on the air, we will certainly pass that on to you for sure. I did receive a text from a senator who was in the chamber, said he's going to get checked out. He walked out on his own. We think he's going to be okay, just needs to get checked. Sure, absolutely. And that's our hope as well. Wow. So I still think forcing a vote is a good move, Thomas says. We're just talking about getting bills to the floor. I mean, Thomas, what's required there is a complete overhaul of law, which would essentially mean that there would almost be no need for committees, right? Every bill would just get filed, and all 3,000 in our state legislature would have to be placed on the floor for an official up-down vote. And that's the only way to get a record. Now, I do support the idea of requiring recorded votes in committees. I do have a problem with that because I think it's fair to say, Rhino, that the fate of the vast majority of legislation, overwhelming majority, is determined at the committee level. Would you agree with that?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, once it makes it through committee, the homework's been done for the most part by the committee chairperson, by the leaders in the chamber, that, get this out of committee, get it to the floor, and this is what's going to happen. I mean, really,
that's the way it's supposed to work.
That's the way it's supposed to work. And I think it, for the most part, generally does. So I certainly support that idea. I could live with that. And that's, for the most part, the case at the federal level as well. And speaking about the federal level, just want to get this out there that you got the House and the Senate up there at the federal level that are, I guess, going in their own direction is one way to put it. Rhino, that the Senate still kind of hung up on having two bills for the budget process, and the House is more focused on one big, beautiful bill, which has been the case. I'm not sure where that's going to go at this point, but we are very fortunate to have Jason Smith. Sorry, I was thinking about something real quick. Jason Smith, he, of course, is the chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee in Washington. He's going to be on the program on Friday. And that's going to be really good because they are right in the throes of that process right now. So we shall see where that goes. But again, the Senate focused on two bills. The House is looking at one big, beautiful bill. I will point out that in both bills, there is a provision that would require the debt ceiling to be increased by $4 trillion. That is at the behest of the president for 2 years. So that means they're anticipating, unfortunately, $2 trillion deficits for each of the coming 2 years. And that is that's disturbing at a minimum. I sure would like to think that we could do more work on trimming the deficit, but it doesn't look like that's going to be the case, certainly based on what we're getting out of the bills that are in both the House and Senate, which would increase the debt ceiling. That doesn't bode well for expectation that you're going to get some sort of decrease in the deficit. It's unfortunate. I'm all for everything that the Doge team is doing. They're rooting out and exposing lots of the wasteful spending, and I do think we're going to make a lot of progress towards eliminating that. Unfortunately, it's just not enough. And that's the big problem, is we got a lot more work to do to trim that deficit. And that means, I think, we're going to have to really take a hard look at mandatory spending, or we're just not going to make any progress, because it's on autopilot, and every dollar we cut, it's a whack-a-mole process. $1 we cut on one spot, we just increase it on another. We're coming right back in the Element Well studio.
It's so awesome! Middays with Gerard Gibert. Come on, let's get on with the show! On SuperTalk Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Well studio. We just want to pass on again, if you're just now joining us, that Lieutenant Governor Delbert Hosemann collapsed on the floor. You see it on video, and Rhino, he hit it hard too, didn't he? So we surely hope for a full recovery, and that he's checked out and is good to go. There could be any number of reasons, right, Rhino, for something like that to happen?
Oh, yeah. I mean, anything from accidentally locking your legs to low blood sugar to much more serious issues.
Yeah. I mean, he could have the flu, all right? I mean, you could. I mean, it's
dehydration can cause you to faint if you're not careful.
Yeah, which is part of the flu process, or certainly a symptom of that. We appreciate Secretary of State Michael Watson for starting our segment with him with a prayer, asking for the Lord to watch over and see that the Lieutenant Governor is attended to by all the medical care that he needs, and that he fully recovers. But just watching that video kind of puts things in perspective, is what it does. Just conducting business there on the Mississippi State Senate floor. I think it was Senator Briggs Hobson in front of him at the well, and the Lieutenant Governor behind him, of course, as the presiding officer over the Senate, as is with our process. Whew. Ben from Madison says, praying for the Lieutenant Governor, I hope he is okay. Appreciate the Secretary leading the interview with a brief prayer for Delbert. I agree. Let's see. If the Lieutenant Governor is unable to continue serving, I think we're getting way out over our skis there, Herschel. Does the Secretary of State assume the Lieutenant Governor's responsibilities? No, I don't think so.
Wouldn't that be...
I'm not sure, honestly.
President Pro Tem?
It probably would be. That's what they're in place for, right?
Yeah.
So
that would be who... Senator Kirby?
Yeah, and honestly, as far as special elections, I'm honestly not sure, Rhino. I don't know that we've ever researched that at all the statewide elected positions. We'd have to see what the process is for that, what the law says about that. But right now, man, Dean Kirby, that's right, the senator from Rankin County. I'm sorry I didn't acknowledge that. He is the pro tem of the Senate, as is Manley Barton in the House. Speaker Pro Tem. Also on the C Spire text line, had a question or just a statement from the 662. Here's a kick in, for future state employees hired after March 1 of 26. 30 years of service gets you 30% of high 8-year average. No cost of living adjustment check at the end of the year. Cost of living is 13 check and much more. Yeah, we're very familiar with it, and we've talked about it on the program as well. This would be the a new tier, if you will, a so-called Tier 5. And this is in an effort to shore up the finances of the public employees retirement system. Anyone that enters this system as of, if this bill should become law, as of March 1 of next year, would be placed in, enrolled in this Tier 5. And it's a hybrid plan. It's a combination of the present defined benefit plan and a defined contribution plan. And just as a reminder there, a defined benefit plan simply means you pay in, and when you start your retirement, those benefits continue for life, unless you choose one of the other options, the lump sum options and so forth. Same as Social Security and Medicare. You pay in. Doesn't really matter how much you pay in with respect to how long your benefits continue. They continue as long as you're topside. Same with the public employees retirement system as a defined benefit plan. Defined contribution plan, on the other hand, simply means it's similar. It is similar to, it's not similar to, an example of it's a better way to describe it, would be your standard 401k plan that your employer offers. You pay into that. Your employer may have some sort of match to that. You accumulate funds in that account, invest those funds as you see fit. You direct the investments. And then when you're ready to start drawing benefits out of it and retire, those persist for as long as there's money in that account. Once you've drawn it all out, that's it. That's the difference between a defined benefit plan and a defined contribution plan. The best way to explain that, I've shared it many times, was Ida Mae Fuller, the very first Social Security recipient. She paid in $24. She received $22,000 out. That's all you need to know as to why Social Security is facing some significant financial headwinds. But it is true, as the texter points out, with this legislation, no guaranteed cost of living adjustment, 8-year investment period, full retirement at age 62 with 30 years, 65 with 8 years. Yeah, that would be the change. It would be a decrease in benefits somewhat. And we'll see how that works out as far as recruiting talent. We got to take a break right now for Fox News and SuperTalk News. Another hour of Middays is coming at you next.
And now, the talk that keeps Mississippi talking.
That's what I like to listen to.
You're listening to Middays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Winter is here again, oh Lord. Haven't been home in a year or more. I hope she holds on a little longer. Send a letter on a long summer day.
Welcome back, everyone. It is Middays. We are live from the Element Well studio. It's the afternoon portion now underway on this
Hump Day.
Right, so we're just seeing more information released about the collapse of the lieutenant governor. He is conscious now. This happened during the session in the Mississippi State Senate about, Rhino, an hour and a half or so ago. A statement has been released. Let's see if I can read it here. Lieutenant Governor Hosemann is doing well and in good spirits. He appreciates all of the medical staff and is eager to return to work. That's the official statement from the office of the Lieutenant Governor. So we certainly hope that, again, he is, that's from the communications director from the office of the Lieutenant Governor. So appreciate our news department passing that on, and that's, of course, being picked up by all the media outlets that cover the Capitol. Have been in contact with the Lieutenant Governor's office now. They're on the list, of course, for any official press releases from the LG's office, and they have that, and then they are circulating that in their various media platforms. We certainly hope the Lieutenant Governor makes a full recovery and is good to go. It was we saw it on video. It was really something to witness that, to observe that. I'm a little concerned about the strike, perhaps to his head. Looks like he hit kind of hard there, Rhino. Is that what you saw as well? A little worried about that. Of course, that's something that can heal. No concerns about that from a long-term basis. But again, that's what's going on down at the state capitol in the state of Mississippi today. Wanted to pass that on to you. Occurred while we were visiting with Secretary of State Michael Watson. Now, guys, we're getting way, way, way over our skis here, but I think it sort of behooves us to understand the law in our state with respect to any seats that might be vacated. You guys know that we've had both of our senators, for example, U.S. senators, they were appointed by our governor when their respective seats were vacated by the current office holders. And according to our law, they maintain their position in those seats until the next statewide election, in which case they, if they choose to run, would again have to win that seat in an outright election to retain it.
And now that we've got official word that he's okay and being tended to, I feel more comfortable. We've got the video. I can play it on the video feed.
Okay.
Let me just get it moved over to here, and
these are multi-year payouts. Each of these has several more years.
Silver. Senator Johnson for a motion to recess. So moved. All in favor say aye. No.
Wow. So that was Senator Briggs Hobson there in front at the podium. Again, the lieutenant governor at his podium, he just collapsed, fell first kind of forward on the podium, if you didn't see the video, and then to his left, sort of laid down there on the floor on the platform. And that was Senator Hobson that, I guess, heard the sound and turned around. And then that was Senator Josh Harkins that was over to the side. I think they were presenting revenue appropriations bills and so forth. And he rushed over and called for the body to recess. And then went immediately, as did a number of other people in the chamber, who rushed to his aid to see about him and offer care. And so that's all we know, guys. At this point, we're told that he was transported in an ambulance. We don't know exactly where for further tests and observation. That is absolutely the prudent thing to do. So it wouldn't surprise me, guys, that this doesn't make some national news because it's a big deal. You know, when you have a statewide leader that collapses while they're performing their duty there, as he was, standing at the lieutenant governor, the president of the Senate's podium on the platform while they were conducting business.
The latest I'm seeing is coming from Senator Josh Harkins. He put on his social media that he appreciates all the calls and text messages concerning Lieutenant Governor Hoseman. And he's reporting that as the Lieutenant Governor walked out of the Capitol, he looked at all of them and said, "Hey, that last bill was awful." And said he's doing well, and if Senator Josh Harkins knows him, he will be trying to come back to the Capitol today.
Gotcha. Yeah, look, I've known the guy for a long time, and I know there might be a lot of disagreement about his policy positions. Heck, I don't agree with him on all the policy positions, but one thing I can say, I'm just going to be honest and objective about it. The guy works his rear off now. I've known him for 40-something years. And he's a so-called workaholic. You can't accuse him of that. Again, you may not like what he's working on. That's the way our system is designed. But you certainly can't assert that, yeah, he's not absolutely exerting all the energy in his body to do his job. Can't say that. You can, again, disagree with his policy positions, his approach, his feelings about things. But I will say this, it's good that he was able to I guess, express his sentiments about the bill. I have no idea what the bill was. But, Rhino, I would say that's good news, and that sounds like he's got his mental faculties.
Yeah, I mean, that's like the verbal equivalent of the thumbs up from the stretcher as they're getting carted off the football field.
That's totally true. That's completely true. So, wow. Man, certainly didn't expect that to be going on today. And again, our thoughts and prayers are with the Lieutenant Governor and his family, his wife Lynn, and his extended family, of course, his children, grandchildren, in the hopes that he makes full recovery. He's going to be good to go. He is the elected person.
I thought the weirdest news for the day out of the Magnolia State was going to be the city of Clarksdale suing a local newspaper to get an editorial removed.
About what? What are they
the editorial was questioning a special meeting held by the city of Clarksdale, and the city of Clarksdale got a court order saying the newspaper has to delete the editorial for criticizing city officials.
No, that ain't how it works, dang it.
Welcome to the city of Clarksdale.
Well, this is no different than the Democrats in Washington that have invested more of their angst and their displeasure with the person and the persons involved in the DOJ work than they are what's been found, because they're interfering with, obstructing their cushy little gig. It's sickening.
It's also highly unconstitutional.
Correct. Is that not one of the legacy key differentiators of this country from others? Is that not one of the main reasons it was even founded? Believe so. So, be gone with you. You don't like it? Do your job. You don't like the criticism? Act right. That's the problem.
Yeah, it's physically impossible for some of these politicians, especially the ones with a D by their name.
So maddening. On the C Spire text line, we were talking a little bit earlier about this new tier that would be created in the PERS, the Public Employees Retirement System. There are 4 now. This would be the so-called 5th tier. And the tier just defines everything from contributions by an employee, the employer, the details and the structure of their retirement benefits that would be available to them as part of participating in, contributing into that tier. This new one is a hybrid model that would have roughly half of their retirement being a defined benefit plan, which is consistent with the current PERS program, the other half being a defined contribution plan, and their contributions would be divided rather evenly between that. But there's one important part of this, Rhino, that this is how it helps shore up the system, is that this is crazy. You know, right now we have this optional retirement plan that's available in the higher ed. Are you familiar with that? The optional, I think it's called ORP, Optional Retirement Plan. I didn't realize this till I dug into it a couple of weeks ago. It's different than the standard PERS program, but we contribute to the taxpayers a certain amount of that exceeds the normal amount. It's weird, and so this would cap that at a certain level to kind of keep more money in the system is the bottom line. We're coming right back in the Element Wealth studio.
We all hear the...
Check it out. Let's do this.
The talk that keeps Mississippi talking. Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Let's get on with it.
On SuperTalk Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays. Yes, on the C Spire text line, I've been seeing posts on TikTok about $40 billion that Doge found that Trump was going to give it to the taxpayers. Actually, it was a dividend that was proposed by Musk, and $5,000.
$400 billion was the proposed amount.
That's right, because the math wouldn't work. $5,000 checks is what he was saying. And he said, of course, this is up to the president. I got to tell you, I disagree with this because all of this money that's been found is not actually there to disperse. You would have to go borrow money to send everybody a $5,000 check. And you know, the last time we did that during COVID, you remember what happened about a year after that? 9% inflation because it was just out of thin air. And that doesn't work. Nothing was produced for it.
And on top of the just inflation on your everyday household goods, the price of random things went through the roof because everybody had an extra grand
to go buy it. And so naturally the price went up. Yes, absolutely. So I disagree with that. I think it's kind of a novel idea. It would be returned, by the way, to the households. 79 million tax-paying households. That's the proposal that Musk said. I don't see that happening. Something I did want to pass on that just happened today, early this morning, is that the president said he don't like the Senate bill. So we mentioned earlier the Senate wants two bills, one that focuses first on the border and energy, and then they would take up the tax extension of the Trump tax cuts in a separate later bill later this year. I'm with the president on this. I've made it very clear that the Senate and the House need to be hyper-focused on extending the Trump tax cuts now. That ought to be a priority. And this idea that, we can't really put that and energy and immigration in the same bill that's coming from the Senate is just horse hockey. There's 100 of you. There's 53 Republicans. That's a lot easier path to getting something done there when you've got multiple issues than in the House, where you're dealing with 435, of which 218 are Republicans, and they're all over the dang map. So I'm glad to see the president said he wants border spending, tax relief, and spending cuts, as well as energy policy, in one bill, which is what the House Republicans are doing. Essentially, he's undercutting the Senate's efforts here. I hope they get the message, but we look forward to talking to Congressman Jason Smith on Friday. He's the head of the House Ways and Means Committee, to get his perspective on this somewhat breaking news that the president's calling out the Senate here. Now, Lindsey Graham, you know him. He's the Budget Committee chairman from the great state of South Carolina. He said that the separate approach was preferable because it implements... I take it back. Trump says this, that the House approach is preferable because it implements my, in all caps, full America First agenda, in all caps, everything, not just parts of it. So you'll know Graham's plan calls for $342 billion in new spending over 4 years. It's going to be more than that, I can assure you. And by the way, that's just, Rhino, we got to keep this in mind. He's just talking about discretionary spending. He's not talking about the automatic spending increases that occur in the mandatory side. This is what I think is not understood by the majority, not only of the public. I'm not so sure that everybody in Congress gets this part as well. But again, you're just talking about the 15% of the total spending amount. The other 70% increases just as naturally, organically. No appropriations required, no action required on the part of the Congress. They're only dealing with 15% of it. That's what's got to change. Trump also passed this on, Rhino. So, I've been saying that one of the things I'm concerned about with respect to tax reform in the state that poses a risk is what the federal government may do with respect to the money that's sent down to the states, and that is especially pronounced and primarily comes in the Medicaid program. It's $7 billion to the state of Mississippi from the federal government to operate the Medicaid program in the Magnolia State. For comparative purposes, our entire general fund is $7.1 billion. Medicaid federal spending only is as big as our entire general fund. That's how expansive that program is. Mr. Trump said, I don't want any cuts to Medicaid. Wow. How about that? Because to get the numbers to work out, to pass legislation on the basis of reconciliation in the Senate, thus not necessitating a full 60 votes, you're going to have to cut somewhere to get the tax cuts through, and Medicaid's been the prime target. Now the president says, nope, don't want to cut that. So I'm not sure. They got some work to do to hash out and make all that math work. Not cutting this, not cutting that, not cutting this. Okay, where are we going to get that from? I don't know. But that's definitely throwing a wrench in the works. He says Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, none of that stuff's going to be touched. Okay, so that leaves defense and the rest of government. That's 15%. But he's also said we need to spend more money on defense because we're getting somewhat exceeded and outpaced by our most ardent foes, China, Russia, etc. So I'm not sure. I look forward to our interview with Chairman Jason Smith on Friday, who hopefully will be able to unravel all this to the extent he can. Boy, did you see Mr. Trump slam Vladimir? No, not Vladimir. What's Zelensky's first name? Heck, I don't even know. Vladimir, yeah. Okay. Putin is Vladimir, right?
Correct.
Okay. It's confusing. You got two guys that are at war with each other that have very similar names there. He's slamming Zelensky. And I think that he's right in doing so, honestly. I really do.
Well, because Zelensky and the Ukrainians agreed that in order to continue getting any aid from the U.S., they need to start giving us at least something they can give us, which is raw materials, minerals, things that can be easily shipped out of a war zone that they're obviously not using and don't need. And then Zelensky, seeing that might put a hamper on his grift of taking money off the top for him and his buddies, because every time you turn around, there's another Ukrainian general getting arrested with millions of U.S. dollars in their home. He's walked back the whole, no, you can't have any raw materials, just send us money. Well, no.
Man.
Europe, if y'all want to take care of Europe, y'all can take care of Europe. America's tired of footing the bill.
It's ridiculous. I totally agree. They can't account for all the dang money. That's one of the first things we pointed out here on the program. You remember that 2 years ago? Like, I could maybe get on board with some degree of financial aid if we knew, what does this mean to us? How do we benefit from this? And can you please provide a detailed accounting, a log, a register of where all the dang money went? But we've learned now with Elon Musk and company that, no, we don't operate that way in the federal government. We just send out $6.5 trillion a year without any accountability. I'm exaggerating a little bit, but what's been disclosed and discovered and revealed is absolutely outrageous. And it's not how anybody runs their household. You certainly couldn't run a business. Hell, if you're a public company and you showed up with your official filings, quarterly filings, well, we don't know what happened to that. You're done. Done. It's not even in question. But yet our federal government with trillions? Oh, it looks like in our disbursement system we don't have an actual record, a code, any descriptive information showing where this money went to. Oh, it's okay. It's just $4.7 trillion.
And politically, Zelensky in Ukraine lost a lot of political leverage when he canceled yet another election, leaving himself in power.
That is true. He's a bit of a...
If the United States could hold an election during the middle of the Civil War, I'm fairly certain they could hold at least one election out of two that he's canceled.
We may describe him as an autocrat. We're coming right back in the Element Wealth studio.
Is everybody ready?
I'm ready.
Ready here.
Middays with Gerard Gibert on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Well, I was just sharing with Rhino that on the break there, I got an email. It says, invoice available for review, payment due soon. And it's a DocuSign for me to review and execute. It says that I bought $698 of Bitcoin, but now I'm noticing it's also got a phone number. It says you can call this phone number if you need support. But everywhere in this email, when the number 0 is supposed to be used, capital O, letter O was used. It's 698 period 00, letter 00, and a phone number of 808 area code 8, letter 08. Nah, that's not
$698?
Yeah. Well, I guess so, because it's 00. 698 on the nose there.
That's just a hair over at the current price, 7/1000th of a Bitcoin.
Don't think I bought any Bitcoin today. And it says you must file your claim within 12 hours. It's not a claim. It's an invoice. So you see how bad that is, trying to get my credentials. That's what they want, of course, is for you to authenticate and just hand them your ID and password. Take it you then use for some nefarious action. Whew. Mose says, Gerard, could all the Doge findings affect our country's financial rating? That's actually a great question, Mose. I don't think so, either way or another, and here's why. Because what mainly drives the rating of our bonds? Two things: the amount of debt, the value of our currency versus competing currencies, all of which are worse than ours. That's the saving grace. And then the third thing is, Mose, it doesn't get talked about a lot, is the ratio of our debt to GDP. And believe it or not, we had a higher ratio of debt to GDP, even though the debt was really nothing compared to what it is today, after World War II, because we borrowed a bunch of money to fight the war, but we grew our way out of that. Totally different situation. Check me out on that, Rhino, if you get a chance. We had a very high debt to GDP ratio in the wake of World War II. So now we have a situation where our debt, and it depends on, there are a couple of different measurements, because you got debt, what's called debt owed to the public, and then you got intergovernmental debt, which means that they're government agencies, federal government agencies, that owe each other. The biggest, of course, Social Security. The Treasury owes Social Security at any point in time a little over $2 trillion. Now, the fund has, and a lot of people think, oh, yeah, the Congress stole all the money, and that's why Social Security is going broke. Absolutely 100% false. By law, Social Security, when it collects more in the way of contributions, taxes on working people, then it pays out to beneficiaries. The surplus can only be invested in one security. That's based on our law. And those are Treasury bonds. They're called special issue bonds that are only available to the Social Security Administration. And those bonds are paid interest by the Treasury, by the taxpayers, which goes into the Social Security fund. And they're redeemed on a daily basis, meaning the Treasury pays the amount that Social Security loaned it, if you will. No different than any other standard government bond. But that's intergovernmental debt. The rest of that's about $7 trillion of the 36. The rest of it is called debt owed to the public. I think a lot of people believe, it's China. I've seen members of Congress say, we just go borrow it from China. That's false. China owns about $700 billion of the total $36 trillion. You following me there? So in other words, they own less than 1.5% is what China owns. Japan actually owns more of our debt than China does, sitting at around $1 trillion, $1.1 trillion. But the main owners of treasuries are financial institutions, individual investors, corporate investors. That's who we owe. So we literally owe ourselves in this particular case. But it's when that ratio gets on up there so that the amount owed is greater than 1 of our GDP, which is about $25 trillion. So right now, you're looking at it, Ron, it was World War II, right, is when it spiked.
Yeah, and it didn't really come back down till the 50s.
Yeah. Economic growth, the post-war economic boom, if you will. Because think about it. A lot of our people who otherwise would have been working and producing and growing our economy, they were fighting war. They were in their prime working age. Many of them were. And so we had to go borrow a bunch of money to fund our war efforts. And that ran up the debt. And that pushed it at an uncomfortable ratio with respect to our GDP. Now it's in the 40s. So now we're hitting that threshold again, sitting at about 1.1, 1.2, thinking about debt held by the public above the amount of our GDP. And so here's what, to your answer to your question, Moses, that's when the bonding companies get nervous, just as they do the ratings companies, I should say, not the bonding companies, the ratings companies that rate our bonds, just as they do with the private sector. So if you look at the credit rating, just think about this, Mose, or anybody else, think about your personal household and your credit rating. What's one of the main things they look at is the amount of outstanding debt you have, and especially relative to your income. And so the higher is that ratio, the more of a credit risk you are. Same thing with the country. When that debt keeps going up and the GDP is not going up at a similar pace, then that number keeps increasing, and the ratings agencies get nervous about that. It's a measurement of the ability to pay your debt. So if we can deregulate, unleash the American oil and gas sector, the energy sector, boost our economy, you see what happens there. The GDP grows faster than our debt does. And then throw into that some spending cuts, I pray. Man, we're off to the races. Then you'll see interest rates come down, our bond ratings improve, which means our interest expense goes down, all the above. Same thing at the state level. It's all the same sort of methodology in computing credit worthiness and bond ratings.
I'm just trying to figure out how Japan survived as a country.
It's crazy, man. I totally agree.
Because their debt ratio, it peaked 2022, where their debt is 215% of their GDP.
Yeah.
They haven't been under 100% debt to GDP ratio since 2001.
Yeah, I knew it had been sitting around 2x for quite some time. You're right. They went through
And somehow they've still got an A rating.
I don't get that either.
It's wild.
I don't really understand that. I've always questioned that. It just seems something that's upside down that. You know, they went through a period of negative interest rates to try to boost their economy because they need desperately to boost their GDP. And the big thing that's plaguing them, as you know, is their aging population. They have not propagated. They have not reproduced. And they're being overwhelmed by old people that are just burdening the system. And not enough young people working to take care of the old people who are retired.
And an outsized portion of the elderly population still working because they have to.
Yeah, they have to. The amount of income they're able to produce is just being retired and sitting at home is not sufficient. But that's a problem, an imbalance in their society that's been building up. Wasn't too long ago they had laws against having too many babies, right? I know China did.
China did. I don't think Japan
maybe
ever had the one-child policy.
But I think it just occurred naturally because it was so dang expensive. And
especially after World War II.
Yeah, limited resources and space and all the above. And they just, you know how the Japanese are. They would just do it just out of respect, I guess, so to speak, and just because it seemed to be the prudent thing to do. But now that's catching up with them. That's the point, and that's causing problems.
There was so much excitement in the 80s and 90s.
Yeah, that's true. Call them live on the air, says Josh and Clinton. I'm not sure who he's talking
about the phishing email.
Oh, yeah.
The problem is, do I hit 0
or O?
Or do I hit 6 for O?
For O. That's right. And they owe me $698 and 66 or O. This really isn't very good, this little ploy, is it? We're coming right back. What a great tune, These Eyes by the Guess Who. Burton Cummings, lead vocalist.
See another one like I had with you. These eyes are crying. These eyes have seen a lot of love, but they're never gonna see another one like I had with you. Baby, 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 baby. Don't you know these eyes?
It's so awesome! Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Come on, let's get on with the show.
On SuperTalk Mississippi.
We're back with you in the Element Wealth studio. Just if you haven't heard, Lieutenant Governor Delbert Hosemann did collapse in the Senate today, presiding over the chamber at his podium, the president's podium there. And, of course, it's going viral. The news is we shared it with you as soon as we found out, and the details are sketchy. We read the statement from the Lieutenant Governor's official communications director. The office doesn't really say anything other than expressing thanks for the well wishes and that he's conscious and recovering and receiving all the necessary medical attention. I believe the word is, Rhino, he's going to be checked out. Of course, you would want to be checked out in that circumstance. Doesn't take long for the wackos to show up, though. I think Rhino agreed that this likely would become national news. You reported on the break to me that it has. It's been picked up. I mean, of course it would. It's captured on video. I'm not sure that the video's still out there or if it's been scrubbed or not. But the news of it itself, with or without the video, is a big thing because it's a high-level statewide office, and it occurred while presiding over the chamber. I think that kind of intensifies the severity of the situation and the gravity of the situation. But of course, William and Brandon sent us a couple of crazy texts, not texts, but social media posts from people. Oh my gosh, come on, folks! I understand the whole vaccine deal, but we've gotten to a point, it feels like, where it doesn't matter what the medical condition is. It's attributed to the vaccines.
Because the people that do that have made being anti-vax their entire personality.
Exactly. And look, that's fine. That's not the question. The issue is just that
anytime somebody makes anything the sole focus of their entire personality, that person immediately becomes one of the most annoying people on the planet. It doesn't matter what the topic is.
Certainly does seem to produce that sort of attitude, but there's no evidence of that. And, newsflash, disease has been around since there have been people, I believe, right? Long before there were vaccines. We're not immortal. We're subject to getting sick. Unbelievable. Ray in Gluckstadt asked a great question, and I should have been more clear about this. What is negative interest and how does it work? I know you're going to think this is crazy, Ray, but here's what it means. If you keep your money in the bank, you pay the bank for it. Why do they do that? So in the case of Japan, they were trying to stimulate their economy, which is the only reason you would do that. So, Ray, if you think about how the Fed will reduce the rate of interest, the benchmark interest rate, which matriculates throughout all interest rates, in an effort to stimulate business, capital investment, borrowing. Think about it. Everything that's financed, houses, cars, massive amount of financing and capital investment by companies. So the lower the interest rates, the less expensive it is, the more apt they are to make those investments. We'll take that a step further. What if it's zero? That means you can't save any money in the bank, if you will. You want to deposit it in the bank and then pay you interest? Forget it. It's the opposite. You're going to pay. So what they're trying to do is entice you to go spend your money in lieu of saving it and earning interest on it to stimulate the economy. That's what a negative interest rate is. Now, other than Japan, maybe Greece, Rhino, Germany, I want to say at one point had a short period of negative interest rates. Could have been one of the nations in South America that had crazy stuff going on at some point. They had hyperinflation.
Venezuela,
yeah. But that's what it's about. I know it's not something you ever hear about here, but wasn't too long ago, right during the COVID era, didn't we drop the Fed funds rate to zero, as I recall? And think about what that was all about. It was to get people to go out and spend their money because the government said you got to stay home. So that was the purpose there.
As of last year, according to the World Population Review, there are no countries still using negative interest rates.
I think that's true. None today. But it wasn't too long ago Japan had negative interest rates for the purpose that I just described.
Looks like as late as 2022, some banks in Switzerland, Denmark, and Japan still had accounts with negative interest rates.
Interesting. Abe in Flowood says, really sad to see all the negative and joking comments on Delbert's collapse. Prayers for him and his sweet family. And to be clear, and maybe I did wrong by just pointing out one that came in on our text line. We haven't seen that be widespread, Abe, and audience. That's the only one I've seen. And I'm not out there looking hard, but I pray that's not the case. I think if that's happening, and especially if it's coming from Republicans, conservatives, those of us on the right, well, then we're no better than the Democrats in that respect, in my view, because that's their tendency. That's their MO. We're out of here today. Back with you again tomorrow. Stay safe and God bless everyone.
A SuperTalk Mississippi Media production.